In a small coastal town tucked away in northern California, where the vast blue skies stretched endlessly above the Pacific Ocean and sunlight danced over soft white sands, a young girl named Emily Harper sat motionless by the shore. She was only 10, yet her delicate frame carried a stillness that contrasted deeply with the lively, sunlit world around her. Her parents had brought her here for the summer, hoping that the boundless beauty of the ocean would ease the sorrow weighing on her tiny heart. But instead of lifting her spirits, the vastness of the sea seemed to echo the emptiness she felt. The soft waves, a crystalline turquoise, whispered a rhythmic lullaby as they lapped against the shore. But to Emily, each motion of the water was a painful reminder of her loss. Emily's thoughts were consumed by the absence of her beloved black and white cat, Max. He had been her solace, her companion through life's small joys and growing pains. Now, staring at the endless ocean, she recalled his soft, understanding gaze and the calming rhythm of his purrs that used to fill their quiet moments together. That silence had been replaced with a cold void, and she couldn't understand how the world could remain so magnificent when he was gone. She thought of happier times, memories of their trips to the Napa Valley, where golden hills rolled endlessly and twilight skies twinkled with constellations. There Max would curl up beside her, his warmth blending with the gentle breeze, carrying the scent of vineyards and wildflowers. Now, sitting by the sea, tears rolled slowly down her cheeks. Emily's mournful solitude was interrupted by the soft crunch of footsteps on the sand. Turning her head, she noticed a boy who seemed to have appeared as quietly as the breeze. He was around 12, with sun-kissed hair tousled by the wind and cheeks glowing pink from the chill air. He sat beside her without saying a word, his calm presence an unspoken reassurance. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and measured, like the waves lapping at the shore. "Why do you look so sad?" he asked, his tone free from pity but filled with gentle curiosity. Emily hesitated, unsure if she should share her grief. But something about his calm demeanor made her feel safe. "I lost someone important," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My cat, Max." The boy nodded solemnly, his deep blue eyes fixed on the horizon. "The ones we love never truly leave," he said after a moment, his voice filled with a quiet wisdom that seemed far beyond his years. "They become part of everything, the wind, the waves, the stars. Maybe Max is here now, in the sound of the ocean or the warmth of the sun." Emily looked at him, her brows furrowed in doubt. "But I don't feel him. I don't see him. It just hurts." The boy turned to her, his expression kind but serious. "Maybe you're looking in the wrong place. See how the waves always return to the shore, even after they seem to disappear? It's the same with the ones we love. They come back to us in memories, in little moments we don't expect." His words sparked something deep within her, a flicker of understanding. She remembered the day they buried Max, how a rare, warm breeze had brushed against her face. For a fleeting moment her sorrow had eased, replaced by a sensation of peace. Could it have been Max, she wondered? "Maybe," she said softly, her voice tinged with hope for the first time. The boy smiled, his eyes gleaming with encouragement. "By the way," he said, "you haven't told me your name. I'm Daniel Parker." A shy smile crossed Emily's face. "Emily Harper," she replied. "Well, Emily Harper," Daniel said, his tone lightening, "this beach doesn't allow sadness for too long. Promise me you'll give it a chance to make you smile again." She nodded, feeling the beginnings of a connection that she hadn't known she needed. Over the following days, Emily and Daniel became inseparable. Their bond grew in the quiet way of childhood friendships, where shared moments spoke louder than words. Together, they explored every inch of the small coastal town, from its rocky tide pools filled with colorful sea creatures to the hidden trails that wound through fragrant pine forests. One sunny afternoon, as they sat by the shore skipping smooth, flat stones across the water, Daniel turned to Emily. "Do you want to meet my grandmother?" he asked, his voice tinged with excitement. Emily looked at him curiously. "Your grandmother?" Daniel nodded enthusiastically. "She's the best. She knows all kinds of stories and makes the most amazing apple pies. Her house is just down the coast, about a mile from here." Intrigued, Emily agreed, and the two of them began the short walk along the beach. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and seaweed, and the rhythmic crash of waves provided a soothing backdrop to their conversation. When they reached Daniel's grandmother's house, Emily was immediately charmed. It was a cozy cottage with weathered gray shingles and bright yellow shutters that stood out against the surrounding greenery. The front porch was adorned with hanging flower baskets and wind chimes that sang softly in the breeze. An older woman, with a kind face and silver hair braided neatly down her back, stood on the porch, her hands dusted with flour. Her eyes lit up when she saw Daniel and his new friend. "Daniel!" she exclaimed warmly. "And who is this lovely young lady?" "This is Emily," Daniel said, beaming. "She's my friend." Emily felt a blush creep across her cheeks as she stepped forward. "It's nice to meet you," she said shyly. "Well, it's nice to meet you too, Emily," the woman replied, wiping her hands on her apron. "Come on in. I just took a pie out of the oven, and I'd love to share a slice with you." Inside, the cottage was as inviting as the woman herself. It smelled of cinnamon and baked apples, and the walls were lined with books and framed photographs. As they sat at the kitchen table, Daniel's grandmother brought over slices of warm pie topped with scoops of vanilla ice cream. "So, Emily," she began, her voice gentle and soothing, "Daniel tells me you've had a tough time lately." Emily hesitated, glancing at Daniel, who gave her an encouraging nod. Slowly she began to share her story, about Max, about her parents' distant relationship, and about how lonely she often felt despite being surrounded by people. The older woman listened intently, her expression filled with understanding. When Emily finished, she reached across the table and placed a hand on hers. "My dear," she said softly, "sometimes the people who are supposed to love and protect us get lost in their own troubles. But you are stronger than you know, and in the love we find in friends, in memories, and in the simple beauty of the world, we can always find a way to heal." Her words were like a balm to Emily's heart, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of hope that she couldn't quite explain. Emily quickly grew fond of Daniel's grandmother, who insisted she call her Nana Rose. Over the next few weeks, Emily spent many afternoons at the cozy cottage, listening to Nana Rose's stories and helping her bake pies, cookies, and other treats. The time she spent there felt like a sanctuary, a warm, safe space where she could simply be herself without the weight of her sadness. One day, while kneading dough for biscuits, Emily asked Nana Rose, "Do you think Max can still feel how much I miss him?" Nana Rose paused, her hands working the dough with practiced ease. "I do, sweetheart," she replied. "Love like that doesn't just disappear. It lingers in the air, in the places you shared, and most importantly, in your heart. That connection is eternal." Emily nodded, feeling comforted by her words. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel and Emily sat on the porch steps, their feet barely touching the ground. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, the kind of sunset that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. Daniel leaned back on his elbows and looked at Emily. "What do you miss the most about Max?" Emily thought for a moment. "The way he used to curl up next to me and purr, it was like he could sense when I needed him the most." Daniel smiled. "I think he's still with you. Maybe not in the way you expect, but he's part of everything that makes you happy now, like being here, watching the sunset." Emily considered his words, her gaze fixed on the horizon. For the first time, she began to see how Max's presence might live on in ways she hadn't noticed before. In the warmth of the sun, the soft rustle of the wind, and the gentle crash of the waves. One breezy afternoon, Daniel had an idea. "Emily," he said, his eyes sparkling with excitement, "how about an adventure? Let's go explore the old lighthouse at the edge of the cliff." Emily hesitated. "The lighthouse? Isn't it closed off?" Daniel grinned mischievously. "Not entirely. Nana Rose says there's a way to get to the top if you're brave enough to climb the spiral staircase." Curiosity got the better of her, and soon they were on their way. The lighthouse loomed ahead, its white and red stripes standing tall against the bright blue sky. As they reached the base, Daniel found a small wooden door that creaked loudly as it opened. Inside, the air was cool and musty, and the narrow staircase spiraled upward, illuminated by shafts of light streaming through small windows. They began to climb, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. When they reached the top, Emily gasped. The view was breathtaking. The ocean stretched out endlessly before them, glittering under the midday sun, while the cliffs below were dotted with wildflowers swaying in the breeze. "It's beautiful," Emily whispered, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. Daniel leaned against the railing, grinning. "See? I told you it was worth it." As they stood there, a single butterfly fluttered past, its wings a vibrant mix of violet and white. Emily's breath caught. For a fleeting moment it reminded her of Max, a sign perhaps that he was still with her in some way. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said, her voice soft but sincere. Daniel shrugged modestly. "That's what friends are for." The end of the summer arrived all too soon. Emily's parents announced that they would be leaving the following morning, their voices brimming with plans and schedules. Emily felt a familiar pang of sadness, knowing she'd have to leave behind the small town that had come to feel like home, and most of all, the people who had made it special. On their final evening, Emily and Daniel sat by the bonfire Nana Rose had built on the beach. The flames flickered and danced, casting warm light on their faces, as the sound of the waves provided a gentle rhythm in the background. "I'm going to miss this place," Emily said, her voice tinged with melancholy. Daniel poked at the fire with a stick. "It's not like it's goodbye forever. You can come back next summer, right?" "I hope so," Emily replied, though she wasn't entirely sure her parents would agree. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, smooth stone. It was painted with a simple design, a wave curling over a heart. "I made this for you," he said, handing it to her, "so you'll always have something to remember this summer by." Emily clutched the stone tightly, her eyes filling with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll never forget you. Daniel." As the flames crackled and the stars began to appear in the night sky, the two friends made a silent promise to each other, a promise that no matter how far apart they were, the bond they'd created would always remain. Back in the city, Emily's life returned to its usual routine. The noise, the pace, and the cold distance between her parents were as suffocating as ever. But she carried the memories of that summer in her heart, drawing strength from them whenever she felt lost or alone. Months later, as another school year came to a close, Emily managed to convince her parents to return to the coastal town. The moment they arrived, she dropped her bags and sprinted to the beach. Her heart raced as her eyes scanned the shore, searching desperately for the boy who had become her closest friend. And then she saw him. Daniel was there, sitting on the same stretch of sand where they'd first met. When their eyes met, his face broke into a wide grin. "You came back," he called, standing and waving. Emily ran to him, her heart soaring with joy. "Of course I did," she said, throwing her arms around him. For the rest of the summer they picked up right where they'd left off, exploring, sharing stories, and creating new memories that would sustain them through the long months apart. Their bond, like the waves of the ocean, was constant and unbreakable, always returning, no matter how far it seemed to drift. And as Emily sat beside Daniel, watching the sun set over the water, she realized that some connections were truly timeless, rooted in the heart and carried forward by the tides of life. Their friendship was one of those connections, a gift she would treasure forever. As the years passed, Emily and Daniel's friendship endured, strengthened by their summer reunions and the letters they exchanged during the long stretches in between. Though life changed around them, the connection they shared remained a constant source of comfort and inspiration. By the time Emily turned 14, her family's dynamic had shifted dramatically. Her parents had separated, their arguments finally giving way to a quiet yet painful divide. Emily now lived with her mother in San Francisco, a city bustling with life, but often leaving her feeling adrift. Despite the challenges, Emily found solace in her memories of the coastal town and the bond she shared with Daniel. Each summer, she would eagerly pack her bags, knowing that those weeks by the sea were a chance to reconnect not only with him, but also with the sense of peace and belonging she struggled to find in her everyday life. The summer of Emily's 15th year was different. When she arrived at the small town, the air seemed charged with a new energy. The once familiar streets felt alive with the hum of tourists, and even the lighthouse, now restored and reopened, had become a popular attraction. Daniel, now 16, met her at the edge of the beach, his lanky frame and sun-bleached hair a testament to the hours he spent outdoors. He greeted her with the same warm smile that had always made her feel at home. "Ready for another adventure?" he asked, his tone teasing but sincere. "Always," Emily replied with a grin. This summer, their adventures took them further than ever before. They hiked through dense forests, discovering hidden waterfalls and abandoned cabins that seemed to hold secrets of the past. They ventured out onto the open water in Daniel's small rowboat, floating under star-studded skies while sharing their hopes and dreams. One evening, as they sat on the rocky cliffs overlooking the ocean, Emily confided something she had never told anyone. "I feel like I'm always searching for something," she admitted, her voice barely audible above the crashing waves. "Something I can't quite name." Daniel looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe you're not searching for something," he said. "Maybe you're searching for yourself." His words lingered in the air, profound in their simplicity. Emily nodded, realizing that, in a way, he was right. As the summer drew to a close, Emily and Daniel found themselves facing an unexpected challenge. Daniel's grandmother, Nana Rose, revealed that she was planning to sell her cottage and move closer to family in another state. The news hit them both hard. For Emily, the thought of losing the place that had become her sanctuary was almost unbearable. For Daniel, the idea of leaving the town he had called home his entire life filled him with uncertainty. On their last night together that summer, they sat by the fire pit near Nana Rose's cottage, their usual spot for quiet reflection. The firelight flickered between them, casting shadows on their faces as they grappled with the weight of the moment. "I don't want this to be the end," Emily said softly, her voice trembling. "It won't be," Daniel assured her, though his own uncertainty was evident. "No matter where we are, we'll always find a way back to each other." They exchanged small tokens to remember each other by. Emily gave Daniel the painted stone he had made for her years ago, and Daniel handed her a small hand-carved wooden charm in the shape of a wave. "This is just goodbye for now," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "We'll meet again. I promise." Emily nodded, clinging to his words as they hugged tightly, their connection stronger than ever, despite the miles that would soon separate them. In the years that followed, Emily and Daniel kept their promise to stay in touch, though life inevitably pulled them in different directions. Emily excelled in her studies, driven by a newfound sense of purpose and the lessons she had learned during her summers by the sea. Daniel, ever the adventurer, traveled extensively with his family, sending Emily postcards from every corner of the country. His letters were filled with stories of his travels and reflections on the memories they had shared, each one a reminder of the bond they would always share. Though the years passed, the connection between them never wavered. and every time Emily looked at the small wooden charm hanging from her window, she was reminded of the boy who had taught her that love, friendship, and the beauty of the world could heal even the deepest wounds. As she stood on the cusp of adulthood, Emily carried with her the lessons of those summers, the understanding that even in loss there is growth, and that the connections we forge with others can sustain us through life's greatest challenges. Her heart remained tethered to that small coastal town, to the endless ocean, and to the boy who had become her anchor. And though their paths might diverge, she knew that some bonds were unbreakable, destined to endure across time and distance, as constant as the tide. "It will be for the best," her mother whispered, her voice barely an echo in the silent house, as cold and distant as the relationship that remained between them. Jasmine, listening from the slightly ajar door of her room, felt a knot form in her chest. She had suspected this day might come, but was unprepared to face the devastating reality of her parents choosing separate paths so irrevocably. With tears brimming in her eyes, Jasmine closed her door and collapsed onto her bed. She clung tightly to her pillow, seeking solace in her memories. Lautaro's words and the wisdom of his grandmother, Nube Rosenda, echoed in her mind. The bonds we create in the heart are like deep roots. No matter how far the branches grow, they are always connected. The breeze drifting through her window caressed her face, lifting her hair in gentle waves and reminding her of the summers in Bahia Inglesa. There, with Lautaro, she had found a happiness that felt eternal, a connection that transcended time and distance. That night, as her father packed his belongings in the room next to hers, Jasmine closed her eyes and imagined herself back on the beach. She saw herself standing beside Lautaro, their laughter blending with the sound of the waves. She promised herself that one day she would return to Bahia Inglesa. A promise made to oneself is a commitment to the soul. Though winds may change and circumstances shift, keeping it alive honors the essence of who you truly are. Time passed, and 3 years later, at 14, Jasmine finally returned to Bahia Inglesa. Now a strikingly beautiful young girl, she had endured dramatic changes in her life. Her parents' divorce had plunged her mother, Anna Constanza, into an emotional and financial spiral. Her once thriving modeling career had faded, and repeated personal failures seemed to have stripped her of her faith in love. Jasmine rarely saw her father, who now lived abroad with a new family. Despite these challenges, she clung to the memories of her summers in Bahia Inglesa, which had become a refuge in her heart. The moment they arrived and settled into the modest rental cabin, Jasmine felt an uncontrollable urge to run to the beach. Barefoot, with the wind playing through her hair, her heart raced with excitement and hope as she made her way to Lautaro's house. When she arrived, the familiar adobe walls still looked warm and inviting, but something in the air had changed. With a knot in her stomach, she knocked on the door, her nerves a mix of excitement and trepidation. A kind-faced but unfamiliar woman opened the door, eyeing Jasmine with gentle curiosity. "Excuse me," Jasmine stammered, her words catching in her throat. "Does Señora Nube Rosenda Carvajal and her grandson, Lautaro Emiliano Carvajal, live here?" The woman's expression softened, a shadow of sadness crossing her face. "Oh, my dear," she began softly, "I'm sorry to tell you that Señora Nube Rosenda passed away 2 years ago. She was a wonderful woman, loved by everyone in the village." Jasmine felt her world begin to crumble. "And Lautaro?" she asked, her voice trembling. The woman sighed. After his grandmother's death, with no family left to care for him, Lautaro was sent to the Bella Esperanza orphanage in Copiapó. The weight of those words hit her like a crashing wave. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "No, it can't be. I believed they would always be here." The woman placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes life takes away what we love, but the memories remain," she said. You can feel them with you in every corner of this beach, in every wave that touches the shore." With her heart shattered, Jasmine wandered back to the beach. Kneeling on the sand, she let her tears flow freely, the sound of the waves echoing Lautaro's and Nube Rosenda's words in her mind. The bonds we create in the heart are like deep roots. No matter how far the branches grow, they are always connected. That night, under a starry sky, Jasmine made a decision. She vowed to do whatever it took to find Lautaro, her dearest friend, and her safe haven. The next morning, determination shining in her eyes, she approached her mother. "Mom, I need you to take me to Copiapó, to the Bella Esperanza orphanage," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. Ana Constanza, confused, looked up from her bed. "Copiapó? Why? What for?" she asked, frowning. "To find Lautaro," Jasmine explained, her chest tightening as she spoke. "His grandmother passed away, and I was told he's there." Ana Constanza's expression shifted to one of vague recollection. "Lautaro? Who's Lautaro?" With the patience of someone protecting cherished memories, Jasmine answered, "He was the boy who comforted me when I lost Tom, my cat, my best friend." Ana Constanza sighed, clearly weary. "It'll pass, Jasmine. It's just a childhood memory," she said dismissively. But Jasmine didn't back down. "No, Mom. I need to find him. Please, all I'm asking is for you to take me there to make sure he's okay." After much insistence, Ana Constanza finally relented. The following day they set out for Copiapó. Jasmine's heart raced with every passing kilometer, feeling that she was not just searching for Lautaro, but also for a piece of herself that had been missing for years. Those who carry someone in their hearts never walk alone, for the memory becomes their most loyal companion. The dusty truck came to a stop in front of the Bella Esperanza orphanage, a modest building surrounded by dry hills and the hum of distant traffic. Jasmine stepped out, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear. Her mother, Ana Constanza, followed reluctantly, her impatience evident in her quick strides toward the entrance. The wooden door creaked open, and a middle-aged woman with a warm smile greeted them. "Good morning," Ana Constanza began, her tone clipped. "My daughter's looking for a boy who lived here a few years ago, Lautaro Emiliano Carvajal." The woman, introducing herself as Sister Emilia, raised an eyebrow, glancing at Jasmine's nervous expression. "Come inside," Sister Emilia offered kindly. "Let me check the records." They followed her into a small office filled with filing cabinets and the faint scent of old paper. After a few minutes of rifling through folders, Sister Emilia pulled out a thin file. "Lautaro Emiliano Carvajal," she began. "He arrived here 2 years ago, shortly after his grandmother passed away. He was a sweet boy, deeply missed by everyone." Jasmine leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Is he still here?" Sister Emilia's compassionate gaze softened as she shook her head. "No, dear. Lautaro was adopted a few months after he arrived. A family took him in, a lovely couple, very caring. He's with them now." Jasmine's heart sank. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on her as tears welled in her eyes. "Can you tell me where he is?" she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I just want to know he's okay." Sister Emilia placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry, but for privacy reasons, we can't share details about the family. What I can tell you is that they were bilingual, with English ancestry. From what I've heard, they've provided him with a good home and excellent opportunities. I'm confident he's happy and thriving." The words were meant to reassure her, but they felt like a wall between her and the boy she had cherished for so long. "Thank you," Jasmine murmured, though her voice was filled with sadness. As they left the orphanage, Jasmine felt a storm of emotions swirling inside her. Relief that Lautaro was safe and loved, but despair at the thought of their lives diverging so completely. Years passed, and by the time Jasmine turned 17, she had grown into a striking young woman, her beauty matched only by her resilience. Her life had taken a new direction when her estranged father invited her to move to the United States and pursue her dream of studying literature. Eager for a fresh start, Jasmine accepted, leaving behind the remnants of her life in Chile. Upon arrival, she was met by her father's wife, Samantha Lucille Thompson, a polished woman whose icy demeanor quickly revealed the challenges that lay ahead. The household was cold and unwelcoming. Samantha's 2 children, born from her marriage to Jasmine's father, were given every comfort, while Jasmine often felt like an outsider. Her father, absorbed in his career, rarely intervened in the growing tension between the 2 women. One morning, as Jasmine came downstairs, Samantha greeted her with a sharp tone. "You are not welcome in my house," she said flatly, her words laced with disdain. "I don't feel comfortable with you here." Jasmine froze, her breath catching in her throat. Before she could respond, her father entered the room, sensing the unease. "What's going on here?" he asked, his eyes darting between them. Samantha feigned innocence. "Your daughter is disrespectful and rebellious. She doesn't follow the house rules." Jasmine's heart sank as her father turned to her, his expression stern. "Is this true, Jasmine?" he asked. Struggling to hold back tears, she answered calmly, "No, Papa. That's not what happened." But he cut her off. "Enough," he said curtly. "You need to show respect, Jasmine." The injustice of the moment burned in her chest, but she refused to let it break her spirit. "Respect is earned," she said softly, looking him in the eyes, "but I understand now that I'll never find it here." She walked upstairs, packed her belongings, and with quiet determination left the house. Alone in a new country, Jasmine wandered the city streets, her meager savings barely enough for a few nights of shelter. Desperate for a place to rest, she entered a university building late at night, finding an empty classroom where she could sit in silence. The next morning, the sunlight streaming through the windows woke her. Hungry and uncertain, she noticed a poster for an art exhibition happening that very day. The event promised refreshments, and Jasmine, driven by necessity, decided to attend. She slipped into the exhibition hall wearing the fuchsia dress she had packed, a vibrant contrast to her quiet demeanor. As she nibbled on appetizers, her striking beauty caught the attention of a middle-aged man with an air of wisdom. "You seem to enjoy the food," he said with a kind smile. Jasmine chuckled, her nerves easing slightly. "It's delicious. If this were a competition, the caterer would win." The man studied her thoughtfully. "There's more to you than meets the eye. You carry yourself with the grace of someone who has faced storms and come out stronger." His words lingered in her mind as the event unfolded. Among the showcased pieces, a painting caught her eye. Her breath hitched as she approached it, feeling a wave of familiarity wash over her. The painting depicted a young girl, resembling her at 10 years old, gazing upward. Above her, a black and white cat and a radiant violet dragonfly floated together in an ethereal scene. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It can't be." Jasmine stood frozen, staring at the painting that seemed to hold a mirror to her soul. Every detail, the child, the black and white cat resembling Tom, and the violet dragonfly, felt like a piece of her own story brought to life. The whispers of the crowd faded into the background as she approached the painting, her fingers trembling as she traced the air in front of the canvas. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Who painted this?" she murmured aloud. Before she could find an answer, the moderator's voice echoed through the room. "For fairness and transparency, the artists' names will remain anonymous until the winning piece is announced at the end of the event. Thank you for your patience." Jasmine's breath quickened as she stepped back, overwhelmed by the thought that someone had painted her life. Who could it be, and why? The hours dragged on as the event neared its climax. Jasmine waited anxiously, her eyes constantly darting back to the painting. The room buzzed with excitement as the moderator returned to the microphone to announce the winner. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this year's Art Student League Showcase is my dragonfly cat. A roar of applause filled the hall. Hasmin's heart raced. The painting, the story of her life, had won. And now, the moderator continued, please welcome the artist behind this masterpiece, Lautaro Emiliano Carvajal. The room erupted into cheers, but for Hasmin, time seemed to stop. Her breath caught. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She turned toward the stage just as a young man stepped forward. He was taller now, with an air of quiet confidence and a maturity that hadn't been there when they last met. His dark, unruly hair and familiar blue eyes made her heart ache with recognition. "Lautaro," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Lautaro accepted the applause with a humble smile. He approached the microphone, his gaze sweeping across the crowd, until his eyes locked on hers. His expression froze, and for a moment it was as if the rest of the room disappeared. "Lautaro!" Hasmin called out, her voice trembling as she pushed through the crowd toward the stage. As she moved closer, a young woman stepped out from behind the curtain and embraced Lautaro with obvious affection. "My love, you did it!" the woman exclaimed, her voice full of pride. Jasmine stopped in her tracks, the sight of them together sending a cold wave of doubt through her. The crowd around her seemed to blur as her hopes began to unravel. But Lautaro's eyes never left hers. Gently, he disentangled himself from the woman's embrace and grabbed the microphone again. "Wait," he said, his voice steady yet emotional. "Before we go any further, there's someone I need to acknowledge." The room quieted, all eyes on him. "This painting," he began, gesturing toward the artwork, "isn't just a piece of art. It's a story, my story, and hers." He pointed directly at Hasmin. The crowd parted as Lautaro stepped off the stage and approached her. His eyes glistened with unshed tears as he reached for her hand. "Jasmine Balza," he said, his voice breaking. "You are the reason I became an artist. This painting, this moment, it's all because of you." The room erupted in murmurs, but Jasmine only saw Lautaro. "You came back," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and relief. "I never stopped looking for you," she replied, tears streaming down her face. As they stood together, the young woman from the stage stepped forward, her expression conflicted. "Is this her?" she asked Lautaro quietly, her voice tinged with understanding. Lautaro nodded. "She's the one I've told you about, the one I never stopped thinking about." The woman took a step back, sadness flashing in her eyes before she turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving the two of them alone in the center of the room. The applause returned, softer this time, as the audience seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. Lautaro turned back to Hasmin. "I promised I'd wait for you two," he said, "and here you are." She smiled through her tears. "And I promised I'd find you, no matter what." In that instant, the years of separation melted away. Lautaro pulled her into a tender embrace as the room erupted into cheers. As the event wound down, a familiar figure stepped onto the stage, a man Hasmin recognized as the gentleman who had spoken to her earlier at the refreshments table. "Lautaro," the man called, his voice warm and proud. "Congratulations, son." Lautaro grinned, motioning for Jasmine to join them. "Jasmine," he said, "this is my father, the man who adopted me and gave me the chance to follow my dreams." Jasmine's eyes widened as the realization hit her. "We've met," she said with a smile. "It's an honor to meet you again." The man nodded, his expression kind. "I knew you were the girl from the painting the moment I saw you. Lautaro's story would be incomplete without you." He reached out and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You are family now, Jasmine. You've always been part of his heart, and now you're part of ours." Tears filled her eyes as she embraced both Lautaro and his father. For the first time in years, she felt truly at home. As the night came to an end, Hasmin and Lautaro walked hand in hand, their hearts full of hope and love. Together they looked toward the horizon, ready to face whatever the future held. Their story, like the waves of the sea, had endured the passage of time and returned stronger than ever. And in their hearts, they knew, some connections are unbreakable, destined to last forever. Months after their reunion, Jasmine and Lautaro settled into a new rhythm, one that felt as natural as the ebb and flow of the tide. Lautaro, now an acclaimed young artist, continued to paint pieces inspired by his memories and the emotions he and Jasmine shared. His work gained widespread recognition, but to him, the greatest triumph was having her by his side. Jasmine, having enrolled in a prestigious literature program, pursued her dream of writing. Her prose, much like Lautaro's paintings, drew deeply from her past, the joys and sorrows that had shaped her into the resilient young woman she had become. Together, they rented a small apartment near the university. The space was modest, but it was filled with light, warmth, and a sense of belonging that neither had felt in years. One evening, while organizing old letters and photos, Jasmine came across a picture of her father. She stared at it for a long moment, her emotions a tangle of hurt and longing. "You should reach out to him," Lautaro said gently, noticing her pensive expression. Jasmine shook her head. "I don't think he'd want to hear from me." Lautaro took her hand. "You deserve closure, Jasmine. Even if he doesn't respond the way you hope, it's important for you to say what's in your heart." Inspired by his words, Jasmine wrote a letter to her father that night. She poured out everything she had been holding on to, the pain of his absence, her desire for reconciliation, and her gratitude for the strength she had found through it all. Weeks later, to her surprise, she received a reply. Her father apologized for his mistakes and expressed his pride in the woman she had become. Though their relationship would take time to rebuild, the letter marked the beginning of a new understanding between them. As years passed, Jasmine and Lautaro's bond deepened. Their shared history became the foundation for a life filled with creativity, love, and mutual support. Lautaro's paintings continued to draw acclaim, and he opened a gallery dedicated to showcasing emerging artists. One of his most popular exhibits was titled Echoes of the Shore, a series inspired by their childhood summers in Bahia Inglesa. Jasmine, meanwhile, published her first novel, a poignant story about loss, resilience, and the enduring power of love. It became a bestseller, and she was invited to speak at literary events across the country. Despite their busy schedules, they always made time for each other. Every summer they returned to Bahia Inglesa, walking along the beach where their story had begun, and finding inspiration in the whispers of the waves. On a radiant morning in Bahia Inglesa, the ocean sparkled under the sun's golden rays as Lautaro and Jasmine strolled along the familiar stretch of beach that had once been their sanctuary. The gentle sound of waves lapping at the shore blended with the whispers of the wind, carrying memories of their youth. "This place feels timeless," Jasmine said, her voice soft and reflective. "It's as if every part of it remembers us, our laughter, our tears, everything we've been through." Lautaro smiled, his gaze fixed on the horizon before turning to her. "It does remember us," he said, "and today I want to add another memory to this place." He paused, kneeling in the warm sand. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box and opened it, revealing a delicate ring. Its design was simple, yet elegant, a silver band adorned with a single pearl encircled by tiny emeralds, a reflection of the ocean and the earth they both cherished. "Jasmine," Lautaro began, his voice trembling with emotion, "from the moment I met you, you became my safe harbor. Through every distance and every trial, you've been my compass, guiding me back to what truly matters. Will you marry me and make this journey ours forever?" Jasmine's breath caught in her throat as tears filled her eyes. Her heart swelled with love, memories of their shared past flooding her mind. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with joy. "Yes, Lautaro, I will." Lautaro slipped the ring onto her finger as the waves seemed to cheer in celebration. They embraced, the world around them dissolving as they held each other tightly. Their wedding, held a year later, was nothing short of magical. It took place on the same beach where Lautaro had proposed, under a canopy of twinkling lights strung between wooden poles. The soft hum of the ocean served as a soothing backdrop to the heartfelt vows they exchanged. The guest list was small but meaningful. Lautaro's adoptive father stood proudly by his side, while Jasmine's parents, having reconciled after years of estrangement, sat together, their shared pride in their daughter bridging the gaps that once divided them. Nana Rose's presence was honored through small touches. Her favorite flowers adorned the tables, and her cherished recipes were served to the guests. Lautaro, with his artistic flair, painted a mural on a nearby wall to commemorate the occasion. It depicted a young boy and girl walking hand in hand along the beach, accompanied by a cat and a dragonfly. "You've outdone yourself," Jasmine said, her voice filled with admiration as she admired the mural. Lautaro smiled, his eyes sparkling. "It's us," he said simply. That night, as they danced barefoot in the sand under the stars, they knew their story had come full circle. After their wedding, Jasmine and Lautaro moved to a coastal town near Valparaiso, where they built a home filled with love, laughter, and creativity. Lautaro pursued his career as an artist, his work gaining international acclaim for its ability to capture raw emotion and the beauty of human connection. Jasmine, inspired by her lifelong love of literature, became a writer. Her first novel was a semi-autobiographical tale of love, loss, and resilience. Dedicated to Lautaro and their journey, the book became a bestseller, resonating deeply with readers who found pieces of their own lives within its pages. Despite their successes, they remained grounded, often returning to Bahia Inglesa to reconnect with the place that had shaped their love. Years later, their lives expanded in ways they had never imagined. Jasmine and Lautaro became parents to 2 children, a boy named Gabriel and a girl named Camila. Both children inherited their parents' curiosity and creativity. Gabriel, with his father's artistic flair, loved sketching scenes from the stories his mother wrote, while Camila, bold and imaginative, often transformed their living room into a stage for her impromptu plays. On one summer trip to Bahia Inglesa, the family spent hours exploring the tide pools, building sand castles, and telling stories under the stars. Watching their children play on the same beach where their own childhood memories were etched, Jasmine and Lautaro felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Our story lives in them now," Lautaro said, as he wrapped an arm around Jasmine. She nodded, her heart full. "And they'll carry it forward, just as we've carried Nana Rose's wisdom and the memories of our past." As Gabriel and Camila grew, Jasmine and Lautaro made it a point to teach them about the power of love, resilience, and the bonds that connect people across time and distance. They often shared stories of Nana Rose, Tom the cat, and the summers that had shaped their lives. One evening, as the family gathered around a fire pit on the beach, Camila asked, "Mom, Dad, do you think the waves remember us?" Lautaro chuckled, ruffling her hair. "I think they do, and if you listen closely, they'll tell you their secrets." Gabriel, always the skeptic, rolled his eyes. "That's just Dad being dramatic." Jasmine smiled. "Maybe. But sometimes the things we can't see or prove are the most real of all." As the years went by, Jasmine and Lautaro's love continued to grow, weathering life's challenges with the same strength that had carried them through their earliest trials. Their home became a haven for friends, family, and even strangers who were drawn to the warmth of their connection. One day, Jasmine stood in her study, holding a copy of her latest book. The dedication read, "To those who have loved, lost, and found their way back, this is for you. May your waves always return to the shore." She glanced out the window where Lautaro was teaching Gabriel and Camila how to fly kites. Watching her family, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing their story was one of hope, resilience, and enduring love. On a quiet afternoon in Bahia Inglesa, Yasmin and Lautaro sat together, their hands intertwined as they watched Gabriel and Camila race along the shoreline. The wind carried the sound of their laughter, blending seamlessly with the eternal rhythm of the waves. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" Yasmin asked, resting her head on Lautaro's shoulder. "All the time," Lautaro replied, "but I also think about how much more we have to look forward to. Our story isn't over, Yasmin. It never will be." And as the waves kissed the shore, ever constant, ever returning, they knew their love, like the sea, was infinite. Years later, as the tides of life carried their family forward, Yasmin and Lautaro decided to deepen their connection to Bahia Inglesa. They purchased a small, weathered house near the beach, the very same one that had once belonged to Nana Rose. Restoring it became a labor of love, and they transformed it into a haven not only for their family, but for anyone seeking solace and inspiration. Gabriel and Camila grew up listening to their parents' stories about the house and the memories etched into its walls. They joined in painting the wooden shutters, planting wildflowers in the garden, and restoring the porch where Nana Rose had once shared her wisdom with a grieving young Yasmin. One day, while sorting through boxes left in the attic, Camila found an old wooden chest. Inside, wrapped in faded fabric, was a collection of sketches, journals, and small trinkets. Among them was a letter written in Nube Rosenda's elegant handwriting. "To those who carry love in their hearts," the letter began. Camila raced downstairs, calling out for her parents. Yasmin and Lautaro gathered around the dining table as Camila carefully unfolded the fragile paper and began to read aloud. "If you are reading this, you have found the home where love grows. I hope you understand that this house was never just a shelter. It was a place where lives intertwined, where sorrows found solace, and where hearts discovered hope. Whoever you are, know that you are part of a story that began long ago and will continue long after us. Carry it forward with kindness and let the sea guide you." The family sat in silence, the words reverberating through them. For Yasmin, it felt as if Nana Rose had reached out across the years to remind her of the profound connection that bound them all. "We have to keep her legacy alive," Yasmin said, her voice steady with determination. Lautaro nodded. "Let's open this house to others, just like she did. Let it be a place where stories begin and hearts heal." The house became more than a home. It became a retreat for those seeking inspiration and refuge. Artists, writers, and travelers found their way to Bahia Inglesa, drawn by the beauty of the coast and the warmth of the Carvajal Balza family. Gabriel, now a young man with a gift for storytelling, often held workshops on the porch, teaching others how to turn their experiences into powerful narratives. Camila, with her natural talent for theater, organized small performances by the beach, creating a space where creativity flourished. Yasmin and Lautaro dedicated themselves to fostering this community of dreamers. Lautaro's paintings adorned the walls, each one telling a story of resilience and love. Yasmin shared her own journey through her novels, her words inspiring others to seek out their own paths of healing and connection. One summer, an older woman arrived at the house, her silver hair tied back in a braid. She introduced herself as Amelia, the nun who had once overseen the Bella Esperanza orphanage. "I heard about what you created here," she said, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Lautaro, I always knew you would grow into someone extraordinary. And Yasmin, seeing you two together again. It's as if the universe always meant for this to happen." Her visit became a treasured memory for the family, a reminder of the many lives that had touched theirs and the enduring connections that continued to guide them. As time moved forward, the couple's children began to find their own paths. Gabriel pursued a career as a journalist, traveling the world to tell the stories of those who were often overlooked. Camila, ever the performer, studied theater in Santiago and eventually returned to the coast to establish a cultural center for aspiring artists. Though their children had grown and the house often felt quieter, Jazmín and Lautaro found joy in the rhythms of their life together. They spent their mornings walking along the shore, their hands intertwined, and their evenings reading beside the crackling fire in the living room. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the porch, Lautaro turned to Jazmín. "You know," he said, his voice tinged with reflection, "everything we've built, everything we've shared, it all began with that one summer. I never could have imagined how far we'd come." Jazmín smiled, her eyes misty. "That summer changed everything, but more than that, it was you, Lautaro. You were my anchor when I felt adrift. You still are." He kissed her hand, his gaze filled with the same tenderness he had shown her since they were children. One day, after many years of love, creativity, and shared purpose, Jazmín and Lautaro decided to write their story together. Sitting in the same room where Nana Rose's letter had been discovered, they began to weave their memories into a book that would capture the essence of their journey. Their children returned home to help, adding their own perspectives and experiences to the narrative. The book, titled Waves of the Heart, became a tribute to the power of connection and resilience. It was published to critical acclaim, touching lives across the world. As copies of the book found their way to libraries, schools, and homes, people from all walks of life reached out to share how deeply the story resonated with them. Many traveled to Bahia Inglesa to see the house where it all began, drawn by the promise of a place where love and creativity flourished. For Jazmín and Lautaro, the greatest reward was knowing that their story had become a part of something larger, a ripple in the vast ocean of human experience. On a quiet evening, long after the sun had set, Jazmín and Lautaro sat together on the porch, the sound of the waves their constant companion. The stars above sparkled like tiny lanterns, illuminating the memories they carried in their hearts. "You know," Jazmín said, her voice a soft melody, "I think Nana Rose was right. This house does remember, and so does the sea. Every wave that touches the shore feels like a whisper of the past, reminding us of who we were and who we've become." Lautaro nodded, pulling her closer, "And as long as we're here, we'll keep adding to those memories, together." They sat in comfortable silence, the love they shared needing no words. As the tide came in and the waves gently lapped at the shore, they knew that their story, like the sea, would endure forever. Their love had become a force of nature, infinite and timeless, a testament to the bonds that anchor us and the resilience of the human heart. To you, the listener or reader of this story, if you've ever felt lost or overlooked, know that your journey is not yet finished. Like Jazmín and Lautaro, you have the strength to find your way, to create connections that heal, and to build a life filled with meaning and love. Thank you for being part of this tale. If you wish to support the dreams of others, share this story, leave your thoughts in the comments, and know that every connection you make brings a little more light to the world.